If only someone had listened to Bob when he said he was scared. If only someone had doubted Mary Ellen when she told her pitiful story. If only one person had looked deeper into her eyes, Bob might have lived. Mary Ellen's story is more than just a murder. It's a warning for any seemingly ideal relationship. Trust your instincts. When someone isn't themselves, don't try to paint them with your imagination. Listen to the victim, even if they say it with their eyes, their attitude, not their words. And finally, kindness does not save those who choose evil. Bob once said, "If Mary Ellen would just come back, I would forgive her." But he didn't know, she never left. She was just there, waiting for the right moment to kill him. If that were your child, would you have time to save him? Or like Bob, would you look into the eyes of the person you love and never see the knife coming to your back? Mary Ellen Samuelson, high school beauty queen, aspiring actress, finally got her leading role. But her stage was the courtroom, the audience was the jury, and the final light was darkness. The verdict. After 3 days of deliberation, the jury returned its verdict: guilty, first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, obstruction of justice. Sentence: death. After Bob's death, the house in the San Fernando Valley was sealed. Bob's parents, who lived in their hometown, held a simple funeral. His mother sat silently, clutching an old photo album. His father said only one sentence: he loved her so much that he couldn't see anything anymore. And now, he's lying on the ground, and she's choosing a party dress. Bob's bedroom door was closed forever. No one in the house turned on the TV anymore. No one watched movies. Because Bob doesn't make movies anymore, they said. A year after the case, the film school where Bob studied established a memorial garden, named after him, the Quiet Lens Garden, the Garden of the Silent Lens. Students came to read scripts, talk about work ethic, and refer to Bob as a model of a dedicated artist. Betrayed by the one she loved, she changed her name, moved states, got married. But an old friend said, Nicole never talked about her mother. She didn't teach her children to call anyone grandpa or grandma. She just said, "My mother is dead, she may not have held the knife. But she certainly held the knifeman's hand." When justice comes, it doesn't knock with a warm hand. It comes cold, like the light of an interrogation room reflecting off the face of the one who used to be called his wife. Mary Ellen was arrested one afternoon in June. She had just gone shopping, wearing an expensive silk dress, the latest designer handbag, and in her wallet was a credit card drawn from Bob's life insurance. As she was handcuffed, she asked quietly, "Why make such a big deal out of it? I'm just living my life." Mary Ellen Samuelson's case was quickly brought to trial with special attention from the public. The media dubbed her the Green Widow, not only because of her greed but also because of the shocking photo. She was naked, lying on a bed in a Cancun hotel, covered in dollar bills, taken just 3 months after Bob's death. The image spread throughout the press and became evidence without words, physical evidence. A life insurance policy signed by Bob, Mary Ellen as the beneficiary. Signed just months before his death. Testimonial evidence: Paul Gall, Jimmy Bernstein's murderer, testified in exchange for a lighter sentence. He told of Mary Ellen's entire plan, from seducing Jimmy to covering up the loose ends. Social evidence: a series of Mary Ellen's acquaintances recounted her boasting about being a wealthy widow weeks before Bob's death. The defense tried to turn the tables. They brought Mary Ellen's frail parents to the witness stand, both of them sitting in wheelchairs, their voices trembling. "She grew up in poverty, she was very hurt. Please forgive her." But no one in the courtroom could forget the photo of the cruel smile of a woman who had just killed the man she loved all her life. 2 weeks after Bob's death, the police received an anonymous call. A young man said, "If you want to know who killed Bob, look up Jimmy Bernstein. He told me about it when he was drunk." Tracing Jimmy's address, the police discovered he was missing. In his room was a $25,000 life insurance policy, with Nicole as the beneficiary. The policy had been filed the day after Bob's death. Another shock, Mary Ellen testified as a witness to Jimmy and Nicole's marriage. She was basically signing off on her own husband's murder. This was no ordinary case. This was a deliberate plan, with cold, calculated steps. 1. Lure Jimmy with false love. 2. Brainwash him with a fabricated story of domestic abuse. 3. Create a fake crime scene. 4. Get the insurance money, throw a party like nothing happened. A neighbor of Paul Gall, Jimmy's friend, came forward to report. While drunk, Paul bragged that he and his girlfriend had taken care of Jimmy. Under Mary Ellen's direction, she said Jimmy was going to talk. He couldn't talk. Jimmy was strangled in his car, his body thrown into a ditch. He was wearing nothing but a bloody t-shirt and his eyes were still half closed. The Bob Samuelson case was no longer a single murder, it was a series of crimes: murder, staging, cover-up. Nicole was only 16 at the time, but she had already mastered the art of seducing older men, taught by her mother. They dressed as a couple, went to bars, smoked weed together, and wore tight leather jumpsuits at a family wedding. Two versions of the same illusion: young, beautiful, and unique. Nicole was the one who took Jimmy to her mother's house. She was the go-between, and, according to the police, the deciding factor in making Jimmy believe he was protecting the woman he loved. The police examined the scene again, this time with a skeptical eye. The curtains were torn from the inside, bloodstains but no drag marks. It seemed the victim had been killed on the spot. The pink carpet where Bob had died was soaked with blood, but Mary Ellen had simply covered it with new carpet afterward. They also found several letters. In one of them, Bob wrote to his friends, "I don't trust my wife anymore. I'm afraid one day I won't wake up." At first, the police thought it was a botched break-in. But the clues started to fall apart. There was no sign of forced entry from the outside. The door had been opened from the inside, then staged to look like it had been smashed. Drawers had been ransacked, but valuables, cameras, cash, were still there. The police made a horrifying discovery. Mary Ellen had told several people that she hated her husband to the core. She said if Bob died, a neighbor said, at least she would leave insurance. Divorce would be a loss. When the rumors became true, people started looking back at the details they had overlooked. 1. Jimmy Bernstein, the mysterious boyfriend. Jimmy was a stranger who had been hanging around Mary Ellen's house for a few months before the murder. A big, taciturn guy who often wore dark glasses. No one knew what he did for a living. Later, it was discovered, Jimmy was a low-level drug dealer, and the fiancé of Mary Ellen's stepdaughter Nicole. When she was 16, he had proposed to her, given her a ring, and planned the wedding. But even more horrifying, he had been seduced by his future mother-in-law into confiding that her ex-husband was an abuser. Mary Ellen said, "Bob beat me, choked me, raped me." He did the same thing to Nicole. All of it was made up. She also made up bruises on her neck, but they were actually the result of plastic surgery. Bob Samuelson, a devoted husband, a loving father, was not just a victim. He was a symbol of a man who believed that kindness could redeem everything. But in this story, kindness is what killed him. Bob had dreamed of being a director. But he chose to be the man behind the camera, because it gave him more time with his family. When he married Mary Ellen, he also married a past she kept hidden, a precarious life, a stepchild, and a soul filled with unquenchable ambition. Mary Ellen's stepdaughter, Nicole, called Bob Daddy when she was 6. He had no biological child, but he poured all his love into that child. He took her to school, attended school festivals, and even spent much of his savings on her private tuition. Bob once told his friends, "I didn't give birth to her, but I chose to love her as my own." And then, when you learn that it was she who called out the name of a drug dealer to kill him, you can understand why this was the most painful betrayal. Bob lay in the hallway, his body already beginning to decompose. He had been hit hard in the head, then shot alive. The pillow was still under his head, as if someone hadn't wanted to leave blood on the floor. Mary Ellen was crying. But her eyes were dry. Her dress was new, all black, low-cut. Her hair was curled, her lips were red. A policeman later said, she looked like she was going to a party. No way. Bob? A longtime friend whispered at the funeral, "I saw him last week. Said he was getting a divorce, starting a new life." Mary Ellen. She's doing fine. Why does she need insurance? The whole town was talking. No one dared to say it out loud, but in their eyes, the woman in the black dress that day was not a grieving widow, but an actress putting on a show. It's like something out of a movie, happening right here in this town. Date of disappearance/discovery, murdered December 7, 1988, body found December 9, scene of crime, home, San Fernando Valley. No signs of actual forced entry, initial circumstances, supposed robbery. Later suspected staged, family, ex-wife, Mary Ellen, living apart but still being well supported by Bob. Mary's stepdaughter, Nicole, 16. To be more precise, it was the small sandwich shop that Bob had bought for Mary Ellen to manage, an attempt to save the marriage. But the shop was always burgled, money was constantly missing. Bob bought a safe, installed cameras, but Mary Ellen didn't seem to care. She left the cash out in the open, reported it missing, complained, and spent it as if it didn't belong to her husband. Bob still trusted his wife. Blindly, there was no blood, no screaming. Just one thing, the chilling silence. Rumors began to spread that Mary Ellen was having an affair. That Nicole, then 16, was frequenting bars. But Bob dismissed them. She was growing up, he said. And Mary Ellen? She was just bored. Bored. That's too mild a word for a ticking time bomb. On December 7, 1988, Bob came home from a day of filming. He was getting ready for the holidays. Christmas was coming, but he wasn't happy. This year, once again, he would be spending the holidays alone. Mary Ellen and Nicole were no longer living with him, they'd moved out 2 years ago, but Bob still had hope. Mary Ellen was the woman of his life. If only she would come back, he'd told friends, everything would be fine. He didn't know that the moment he was about to file for divorce, the moment his greed signed his death warrant, on December 9th, Mary Ellen called 911. Her voice was hoarse and panicked. "I can't reach my ex. I'm afraid something's wrong." The police arrived. The front door had been forced open very clumsily. Furniture had been shuffled around, movie style. It was as if someone had staged a break-in. San Fernando Valley, California, where the American dream is carved out of sunshine, white picket fences and friendly smiles. But every paradise has a gate to hell. In the valley, everyone knows each other. Neighbors greet each other by name, doors are rarely locked, children ride their bikes around as if nothing bad could happen. Here, Bob Samuelson and his wife, Mary Ellen, live in a small, unassuming but tidy house. As a cameraman, Bob is often away from home, traveling with large film crews. But every time he returns, he always brings gifts for his wife's daughter, Nicole, and a smile for Mary Ellen, the woman he has been infatuated with since high school. That man, everyone says, is the kind of man who can sacrifice his whole life to keep a family together. But what he doesn't know, that family has been broken for a long time. The peace began to crumble not with gunfire, not with blood. But it was the little things, the nights Mary Ellen didn't come home. The times Nicole skipped school. The unusual appearance of expensive items in the house. And the strange men Bob didn't know. Who killed Bob Samuelson? How did a wife and a mother become the black-dressed assassin? And is justice strong enough to punish the crime of wearing designer dresses? Let me retrace Bob's steps, the man who believed that love was enough. To see clearly, betrayal does not come from strangers, but from the closest person. Robert Samuelson came home one cold December night. He had no idea that he had just stepped into a horror movie and was the victim. Bob turned off his car lights and entered the familiar house, once a home, now a silent cage. He had no idea that beyond that door, fate awaited. And a few minutes later, the good man's life would end, not by disease, not by accident, but by greed and cold betrayal from the woman he once called wife. In those final moments, Bob had just stepped out of the shower when he was attacked. A hard blow to the head, then a muffled pop behind the pillow. It all ended in silence. How could a man living in the heart of Los Angeles, with a home, a wife, a child, be brutally murdered in his own home, and no one would hear? The police initially thought it was a robbery. The door was forced open, the furniture was in disarray. But something was wrong. There was no sign of forced entry. No screams for help. And most importantly, the woman was so distraught that she called 911. Wearing makeup, a backless dress, and a smile, and if I told you that the mastermind was not a random murderer, but the woman who had sworn to be with you forever, would you believe me? This story is more than a crime. It is a tragedy of trust. It is the price of illusion. It is an indictment of the American dream, when we believe that love can save everything,